everyone. Welcome to iTOO TV. We are at the drone conference here in Kempton Park. The drone conference is sponsored by iTOO Special Risks, and I am joined by product champion Kopano Tholo. Kopano is a product champ at iTOO Special Risks, and he looks after the drone product. Welcome, Kops.
Welcome. Thanks a lot, Tov. Thanks.
Okay, Kopano, tell us a little bit about your journey at iTOO.
Started working with iTOO from 2018, coming in as an administrator. So getting to iTOO, I've got a bit of a background with insurance, but I've always wanted to be an underwriter. So joining iTOO and learning that there's more than one side of insurance, which is dealt with. So started in 2018, and immediately in the fourth month, I joined iTOO. I was told about drones. Because I had this keen interest in what drone insurance is about, I started doing some reading and getting more information about this drone business. So I can say my journey with iTOO, when it started in 2018, I was immediately hooked up in the drone space as well.
Okay, and iTOO, we like to say that we get involved with the communities in which we insure, and the drone space is one such thing. Do you live and breathe drones? What does your life in insurance look like?
I believe, although I believe I haven't lived up to it yet, but I am currently trying to get myself involved in as much drone activity which is happening. So currently, if I'm not home looking at YouTube videos about what is happening in the drone space, I'm currently speaking to people, telling them what impact the drone industry is currently doing from a security perspective and in any professional space. I'm also currently taken a journey to get myself licensed with an RPC so I can be able to fly these babies, because I think speaking about it is one thing. I need to just be in an operational environment to see actually what difference can I make and what flair I can bring in from an insurance in understanding those risks as well.
And how important is it for an underwriter to understand the environment in which they operate? So why is it important for you to go and get your RPC?
Lovely question. In terms of the importance of an underwriter being involved in that space and knowing and understanding the risk. So as an underwriter, you can't just underwrite something you don't even know what the risk involved in that risk is. So the importance of knowing how to fly is me understanding different operations which are taken. So for instance, if I may just add, in an agricultural space, knowing what happens in a crop spraying environment, how these drones are being operated in those types of environments. From a security space, what is it that these people are doing with security? How are drones improving the livelihoods of our brothers and sisters from a first responding perspective, instead of them just going into the fire? So drones are assisting them in being prepared tactically for what's ahead. So the importance of understanding those risk measures is quite important as an underwriter, because you're able to underwrite a risk based on the risk exposure which is involved in that.
And in your experience, Cops, how important is it to use drones as risk management or for risk mitigation, rather than coming in at the tail end when there's been a disaster or where there's been a loss?
So on my side, I'd say it's quite important, because from an efficiency perspective, so efficiency in terms of from a cost perspective as well, it's rather much more efficient using a drone in a mapping scenario, because what it would take a person and a human being 3 days can take a drone we could say half a day to complete an operation. We could also say the importance of a risk mitigation is from a security perspective. Instead of having guys, security guards, go unprepared to go look for criminals who they don't even know what those guys are carrying. If you mitigate that with the drone, these drones are coming with thermal readers now. So you can be able to know how many guys are there on the ground, what do those guys have. So you can adequately prepare how you obviously target that operation and what they need to have armed for themselves. So it's quite important for myself to mitigate the risk with the drone itself.
Yeah, and I always find with, I don't want to call them criminals, but they always one up on insurers. They're always one up on human and on individuals. How is it that we are making sure that our drones are protected? What are some of the risks that some of these drones that we've seen here today face out there?
So, in terms of any tactical response, these drones face being shot down by the criminals themselves. So some of these drones now, you're finding drones now, they're becoming more quieter from an operation perspective. That's the one element that I can think from a security perspective, because the danger is criminals can spot these drones from a mile away. They can shoot them down, and that's an exposure on the client themselves, where that's what we are trying to come in and cover from an insurance perspective, because we know there's a risk exposure of sending a drone out. Any criminal can shoot it down. What does it leave? Where does it leave a client, or where does it leave the situational awareness from that point? So
what does the drone insurance cover?
Drone insurance covers you for, I'd say, throughout your whole journey. So practically, in simple terms, I'm covering you whilst you're traveling to your place of operation. I'm covering you in operation of your drone. So even in flight of any operation you might be doing would be covered. You're covered for any detachables and attachables that you might have. Any spare parts that you might have will be covered as well from the drone space. We also cover, on Section 3 of the policy, we cover third-party liabilities. So any property damage done to any person's property, or any person as an individual would be extended to be covered. Our policy would also cover you for any noise liability or any invasion of privacy, because we do know that from a poppy perspective, there's a whole lot of invasion in specific spaces. And I say there's a fine line of understanding how invasion of privacy works, because you might just be operating your drone. You might think you're safe operating your drone above your house, but immediately that drone gets into the air, you've got visual sight of your next door neighbor. So our policy does also extend to cover that. We also cover you for any data lost. So for instance, in any of your operations, you might be hacked, and then your data that you have been collecting for that day gets lost. So our policy does cover the cost of retaking that data as well. So our cover is quite wide as well in terms of your operational scope. So you can be a client who's operating in South Africa, have a job in a neighboring country. Our cover will follow you to those operations in those countries.
That's interesting. So what if I'm not a South African based company, and say for argument's sake, I'm based in Zambia? Would I still be able to get cover from iTOO?
Certainly. So through our African footprint, we work through our network with our specialist partner. So in any of the SADC regions where we've got a hard presence, we have got an iTOO dedicated resource in country to be able to assist you with your specialist type of insurance policy that you might need. So if you're a client who's in Zambia and you need cover to be taken locally in Zambia, we're able to assist you with your insurance policy from there.
Okay. And what sort of trends are you seeing in the drone space where insurance can be of assistance?
The trends we are certainly seeing from, I think, if I can talk about it from the back end, is a claims trends which leaves clients not knowing if they're covered or not. So for instance, you get a whole lot of young pilots who are coming into the space, and what we call that situation a pilot negligence. So we are seeing a whole lot of claims coming from pilot operational errors, which some pilots, from a situational awareness, they're not taken into perspective of doing due diligence before flights are taken. So most of our claims are actually coming from the human element side of the drone, because technology and the advancement of drone is quite interesting, and I can say drones are being developed every single month. I mean, every third month. It's like, I call it a facelift. In terms of technology which is imparted in drones. So now we need obviously a trend that we're seeing is pilots are not doing due diligence, not doing proper pre-flight checks, contractual agreements. They are pushing drones to certain limits which drones can't even handle. So mostly from a trends perspective, that's what we're seeing on the back end.
Okay. And what do you say to drone owners that say, well, I'll just insure my drone in my personal policy that is through a personal liability insurer, and I'm not going to come to an expert who understands drones, etc. What do you say to that type of individual?
With that situation, I always advise the clients to obviously check what you actually be covered for in your all risk policy, because in most chances with your all risk policy, certain an operation is excluded. So your all risk policy will just cover you for anything on the ground. You won't get the required liability cover from your all risk type of policy or your home policy. So a specialist insurer covers you for the actual usage of the drone itself. So on my side, it's an educational journey which you have with the client, and I'd rather be with a specialist than just taking any other insurer. Because anyone can say I can insure a drone, but how do they insure it? What am I being insured for? So that's why a specialist is required to insure you specifically on the drone's product itself.
So all risk is not all risk.
All risk is not all risk.
It's actually you taking all the risk.
You taking the risk to your pocket.
That's quite interesting, Cops. And then just in terms of the maturity of the market, how do you see the market maturing?
So if I can say, we've seen the market maturing year on year. We do obviously, I do note from a regulation perspective that the regulations are still tight. But from an awareness perspective, the market slowly but surely is maturing to a level where certain regulations are opening and certain businesses, I always say, certain businesses are actually noticing the importance of having a drone do certain work for you. As I did mention earlier on, the effectiveness and the cost efficiency of drones, which is helping. And I think one thing I can also attest to is currently we're facing a high unemployment. I see drones as something which could assist us with an employment perspective, with a whole lot of youth sitting at home. They can become pilots with certain programs which are available within the country, because we adequately do need more pilots, young guys who are interested in technology to learn the ropes of what's happening in this industry. Because drones certainly are a game changer in any industry, and everyone is adopting business from a data collection. And as we always hear it in certain talks, that data is quite important. So especially if you're a surveyor, if you're a farmer, if you're in security, drones are your go-to.
Yeah, that's important that you raise the comment around skills development and developing our young people and the opportunities that drones do present. Do you foresee that young people can get access into the drones industry easily, or are there certain barriers to entry that make it difficult for them to come into the industry?
From my take of understanding slowly, there's still a lack of information and a lack of knowledge. There are channels, however, it's not reaching out. So I think the government and private sector partnering in that space would reach more youth in terms of what we actually do need. We're crying about security. We've seen how drones can obviously help us curb that risk of crime in our communities. So I think from my side, there's still a lack of knowledge, which obviously our government needs to do more, and obviously business now itself also needs to take part in these initiatives in grooming these young people, obviously, and helping them identify that there's this new technological space which is actually growing, that I can actually go into and do something, instead of the traditional space which we see a whole lot of youth in high school, or that's what they are exposed to from a career development perspective. So now technology is bringing a whole different spectrum.
Okay, that's cool. And Cops, just to take you back to that one insurance question that I asked, what do you say to a person who says Africa is not litigious, so I don't need the liability part of the insurance, I only need what is covered in the all risk policy?
The problem on my side, the problem what I'd say is then you don't understand the type of operation and the risk that you are involving yourself in, because anything can happen with a drone. You're operating, it's either over people, you're operating close to private properties, you're operating close to people's cars, you're operating over open fields. I mean, if a drone would hit a power line, your drone could actually catch fire. And
cause fire.
There's a ripple effect in terms of what could happen in that space. Your drone itself, because these drones now are coming in different sizes. You've got drones coming into the market. I think currently we have a T40, which is an agricultural drone, which is at 110 kilograms. That's maximum takeoff mass. So if that would fall on someone, that's a person dead. You've got drones operating, depending on if you understand that's why I say it's quite important as a client to understand where you're going to be operating, because you've got drones operating in mines. What are you operating on in mines? And if something happens, because it's a drone, it's an electronic, it might fail. So if that thing stops operating, what is it falling on? So those are some of the risks which I tell my clients. You need to think, don't think just about what you have in front of you. Think of the risk of where you're putting this and what could happen around.
Okay, maybe on the lighter note, let's speak about the conference. What has been your experience of the conference?
My experience of the conference, actually, I'm actually excited in terms of what I've seen the conference become over the years. I mean, I think last year, we had an attendance of around about 70, 80 people. And I can confirm this year we've got an attendance of around about 100, 110 delegates coming in from this conference. So it's certainly gaining its traction. It's obviously does. I've had a couple of conversations with people who are interested in getting to this industry. So there is awareness. People are actually researching about drones, what it can do from a business practice from them. So this conference is actually good. It could only grow stronger. And hence I say this is Southern Africa's biggest drone conference. So I'm really excited about what I'm seeing.
Cool. And what's the importance of having an insurer at the forefront of all of these technological developments and AI and drones, etc.?
I'd say the importance of having an insurer at some of these conferences is you have someone who's taking care of your risk. Because with all of these conferences, technology and everything, there is a risk exposure which is involved in anything. So if you've got an insurer who's taking care of your risk needs, you are in a better place.
Cool. Kops, any closing shots? Anything you want to say that I haven't asked you?
You've asked me everything. Thanks a lot for coming through and doing this interview with me. I really did enjoy it, if I can say. And I look forward, obviously, to seeing how the conference can grow from here till next year. And thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We were broadcasting live from the drone conference in Kempton Park. And thank you to Kopano for joining me today. This is Tove signing out from iTOO Special Risk, Africa's favorite drone insurer.